Welcome to Adventure Freaks, a podcast on living abroad on a budget.
All right. So Phil Ray is my guest tonight. Phil, thanks so much for being here, man. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, this is great. So Phil Ray, he lives in Brazil. He lives in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And he grew up in Jersey and decided that and he had some family. Your family's from Brazil. And
Yes.
decided to head back and return to his roots and hang out. And he's doing some really amazing things. He's a musician, he's a writer, he has a podcast down in Brazil. He's a very active and unique guy. And I just want to thank you again for being here, man. So my first question to you is, um, Brazil is a huge country, and it's
Yes.
just a beautiful country. I love the people. When I lived in New York City, I had a lot of friends from Brazil, and it was one of the warmest, friendliest group of people that I hung out with. There's just something about Brazilian people that are incredibly warm, kind, and friendly, and I just love that. Um, what why did you head back to Brazil, and how did you land in Sao Paulo? There's so many beautiful destinations. Sao Paulo is this amazing metropolis. I mean, it's like, what is the population there? I mean,
It's a
how did you
megapolis.
yeah, it's huge. There's like
It's huge.
millions of people there, but
Yes.
how did you choose Sao Paulo over, like, a lot of people think of Rio, I think of Salvador, there's a
hmm
lot of really unique places.
Well, I didn't really choose São Paulo. São Paulo chose me, you can say, because like I was telling you before we came on, I was born here. I was actually born in the Northeast in Recife, but I was adopted very young within the family, and we moved to Sao Paulo. I think my adopted mother went to visit family in Recife, saw that I was not being very well taken care of. I was about 1 or 2 years old, so she offered to adopt me. Very crazy story, because she said she was having dreams of like her mother handing her a child, because she was past childbearing age. She was 40, 41 when she adopted me. So when she went there, she saw me, she said, this is the kid from my dreams. So she adopted me. We came to Sao Paulo. So Sao Paulo is what I knew of Brazil. Even, as a little boy, you still have some memories. So we went to the US when I was 6, and became American pretty much culturally. I feel like a gringo in my own country, um, because culturally I'm much more American, and lived my whole life there. And I think what happened is I went on the wave of most Brazilians around 2008, 2009. America was going through that whole crisis mode, right? The housing bubble and all that stuff was going on. And a lot of Brazilians went back to Brazil because Brazil was going through a boom at the time, a very big boom. And so I got on the train. My there were some personal issues too that I don't want to talk about, but Brazil just seemed like a good place to go. And then the serendipitous part of it all is that I have a really good friend. When I first started making music in the US, I was maybe 17, 18, who I saw her singing at a cafe a cappella. And I told her that night, I said, I'm going to write some songs for you, which I did. We became fast friends. She started singing with me. And my brother's best friend from childhood went to the US. We got her and my brother's best friend together. They got married, and they went back to Brazil after 9/11 because they were feeling the stress. After 9/11, he got very freaked out. And so she was living in Sao Paulo. So it was very cool because it's like I didn't know anything in Sao Paulo except for her. So I ended up staying with them for a little bit down here. And then eventually I found my own way and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I didn't even think of anywhere else because I didn't know anything else. What I knew was
Sure.
Sao
Yeah.
Paulo. And I figured, and also I'm a city guy, never liked the beach that much, even in the US. I have a sister who lives in Miami. I love my sister, but one month in Miami was like the worst month of my life. I
Mm.
really don't like that scene. I'm much more, I live in South Jersey, which is very close to Philadelphia, right across the river. So from the time I was 12, 13, that I could get on that train across the Ben Franklin Bridge, I was in Philly every weekend. I went to university at Temple. So I'm very much a city guy. So Sao
Nice.
Paulo just felt natural, and it still does. I love the heck out of this city. I really love it. I've been to other places, love them too. Some places less, some places even a little bit more, but Sao Paulo just is right in my wheelhouse. It's a really great city.
Yeah. Let me pull it up on the map here. I got a Google map. I'm going to share it here.
Oh, cool.
And so we could show people where Sao Paulo is located. So here here's Brazil. We'll zoom in here.
There we are.
And
And look
there
at the
we are.
size of this country, folks. I mean, a lot of people don't realize it's like if you take the US and just kind of flip it north south, you get Brazil. You watch one movie and you think you know Brazil. It's no, Brazil is so much more than Cidade de Deus or whatever you saw
Yeah,
in
no,
the movie theater.
it is. It's a huge country, and there's just so much to see in Brazil. And so
Hmm.
we're zooming in. So it looks small from here, but what's the population in Sao Paulo?
Well, man, if you include the metropolitan region, it's 20 million. Like
Okay.
in the actual city, it's about 9 or 10. But so many people come in and out. You can see that it says São Bernardo do Campo, Cotia, which is very close. I can run to Cotia. It's that close to me.
Hmm.
Barueri, they include this as part of São Paulo because everybody just goes to work, they're in São Paulo. So if you include all of this metropolitan region, it's about 20 million. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's a lot of people, man. A whole lot of people.
It doesn't look like it's that far from the beach either.
It's about an hour and a half. If you get no
Okay.
traffic, you can get to the closest beach in about an hour and a half. But
Okay.
generally, it's about 2 hours or so. It's not that close to the beach. Don't go to São Paulo for the beaches.
Yeah.
Actually, they have a joke in São Paulo. The beach of the Paulistano, which are people from São Paulo City, if I'm not mistaken, are the malls.
Hmm.
And that for me was a culture shock because São Paulo is a city that likes to flaunt what they have. So it's people go to the mall, and I'm used to New Jersey going to the mall in like leg warmers, old shorts. You see the old ladies doing jogging, fast walking around the mall. So I come to the mall for the first time. I do exactly the same thing, and then I see all these people on a Saturday morning all dressed up. They got the pearls on. I'm like, what's going on? And they do joke that like the mall is like the Sao Paulo people's beach. It's the place where they go to hang out, have drinks. You can drink in the mall, eat at a nice restaurant. So different culture,
Hmm.
definitely a different culture.
So if we look at Sao Paulo, where are some of the cool places to live? If you're going to decide to live in Sao Paulo, um, where
Oh,
where do the people look at? I mean, what are some of the neighborhoods that they kind of focus in on?
all right. See if you can zoom in just a tad more so you get some of the neighborhood names. I see Tatuapé there. Okay. So you got the Museum of Arts of São Paulo.
Yeah.
That's the center. Okay.
Yep.
That's a great area. That's
Okay.
Avenida Paulista. And you said, later I can send you some pictures of that. So Avenida Paulista is like the main strip. Beautiful, however many kilometers long. It's the business district, but you got great bars, great restaurants, theaters, everything's on Avenida Paulista. So if you go there, if you wouldn't even put it on Google, Avenida Paulista, you're going to see some real nice pictures of the area.
Hmm.
And so I mean, if you're just coming here and you're unsure, maybe you don't speak that much Portuguese and you want to feel comfortable, you might even meet some other expats. I would say be around that region. It's like the easy region of São Paulo to be in.
Sure.
After you feel a little bit more comfortable, it really depends on your lifestyle. I have friends of mine that love living in Centro, which is downtown, the old downtown.
Hmm.
It's kind of insane there. Okay. It depends if you're on that vibe. It's party all the time. 24 hours. You can walk everywhere. So if you got an apartment down there, you're not worried about public transportation to get home. It's very close to go here, there, and everywhere. But that's also where you have the famous Crackland. I don't know if that's been ever on the news. I'm sure it's been, if you read The Guardian or something, they talk about it, which is, there's a big crack epidemic in Sao Paulo. And there's a region that's actually called Crackland, Cracolândia. And it's a big eyesore on the city. And it's mostly in the downtown region. Good news is that crackheads generally, they're not that fast. You can kind of just swerve around them, but every once in a while you may, have to deal with some guys who just, want 20 reais, 10 reais. A friend of mine that lived downtown, when I first came down here, she used to say, this is my favorite place in Sao Paulo, because if you do get mugged, they just want $10 to go buy some crack. They're not trying to take your car or your watch. So I said, it's a good way to think about it. So if you like that Hell's Kitchen type of, vibe, that's the place. Downtown.
I do.
Yeah, no, I love going downtown. I love it. It's just that I need to come home and feed my dog type of vibe after. I'm the type that likes to go in the mess, but then get the hell out, after I'm tired of it. In downtown, you're going to get that all the time. But there's some great architecture down there. That's where you get beautiful architecture, because that's the old town, so it's very European. Unfortunately, not very well taken care of. But I like to always imagine I put on these magic goggles where all the graffiti and the piss stains are gone, and I can look at, wow, this beautiful Baroque architecture downtown. You have the Japanese neighborhood, which is very famous, Liberdade. You have great museums. There's been kind of a rebirth of downtown a little bit, with some newer restaurants. Bit safer than when I first got here in some aspects, but like I said, because of the whole Crackland thing, it can be a little sketchy in places. So there's that. Where I live in the suburbs. And I think psychologically, I must have tricked myself into going back into my American life, because in the US, I lived in South Jersey, the Garden State, and I would go into the city, have my fun, and go back to the Garden State. So in a way, I think I recreated that here in Sao Paulo, because I live in a neighborhood called Butantã. And Butantã is green as hell. It's just parks and houses. And Sao Paulo is that big, guys, that if you look, I'm sure, Ray, if you put a picture of Sao Paulo, if you just Google Sao Paulo, you're going to see a sea of buildings, and you think that's all Sao Paulo is. It's like, no, that's what sells a nice postcard. But Sao Paulo is huge, and it's got a lot of these small neighborhoods that are quiet, tranquil, lakes and parks and little squares. So Butantã, when I found this area of Sao Paulo, which is on the west side, it's a much greener side of Sao Paulo, much more houses over here, a little more laid back, a nice mixture of people. I like that. I like the high class, low class, kind of all living together, middle class, all living together. And I can rest. I'm in my house right now. It's quiet. I got my dog. He's outside, and then I leave the house and I go downtown for work, and I get that fix for the nuttiness. And then I come back home at night and just, watch my Doctor Who, my Star Trek, and just chill. So different. Sao Paulo is many cities. I always like to say this, because I know expats that come to Sao Paulo and they're like, I hated it. And the first question I ask them is, where did you stay? Because unlike Rio, for example, or Salvador, those are places that it hits you right in the face.
Yeah.
You go there and you see, this is what Rio is. Either you're going to love it or hate it, but it's in your face.
Yeah.
In Salvador, I've never been, but I imagine it's similar vibe. Sao Paulo is not. You have to work for Sao Paulo, because you can end up in a neighborhood here where you're like, I even say, if I ended up in some of these neighborhoods, and it's not because they're bad neighborhoods, actually really decent, nice neighborhoods, I would hate it. I'd be like, get me the F out of here. Like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
And then you take a metro train 3 stops over, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, like this is where I want to spend the next 10 years. You know, I've been here for about 11 or 12. So Sao Paulo is a place you got to explore. It took me maybe close to a year before I really felt like, hey, I think I kind of really love this city. You know, at first I just kind of liked it, but now I feel like I'm a citizen of this city, and I'm really exploring everything that it's got to give, and it's got a lot to give. There's so much to do here,
Sure.
so much to do.
It sounds like there's just a lot of different sections that people really need to explore in Sao Paulo to
Mhm.
really get familiar with. It's almost like New York City. There's so many
Yeah,
different neighborhoods, right?
yeah.
And
It's like New York, but multiply it by a million.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Are there a lot, have you met a lot of expats there? And if so, where are they from? Where are the expats coming from?
Well, I meet a lot. One, because I'm an administrator in the Worldwide Expats in Brazil, the original, which is where I got in touch with you actually. And I'm also in the Black expats circle down here. So I get to meet a lot of expats. I work with some tours. So if anybody wants to follow me on Instagram, Sao Paulo Tours, and with the podcast too, the Brazil Expat Journal, I get to talk to a lot of them, and they're from all over. Majority, of course, is going to be U.S. and England. That's
Hmm.
the majority, but you do get some people from France, some Russians, a lot of Africans, you know, from Nigeria, Ghana. I met a guy from Sierra Leone a couple of years back, real nice guy. So people from everywhere. Of
They're
course,
coming
even
from every,
some,
yeah.
yeah, other Latin American countries, because Brazil's like the most stable out of the instability that is Latin America. Brazil's probably the most stable. So a lot of people come here. It's like almost in the same way you think, you know, people are going to the US to try to just get their stuff straight. People come to Brazil for that, or they just come, you know, if they already have money, they come here because it's cheap. If they're using foreign currency, it's somewhat stable again, and it's beautiful. It's a nice place to live. It's got its issues, it's got its problems, got its challenges, but you can have a nice life down here.
Hmm. Now, I know Brazil, the culture is known for they're big on football, or what we call soccer here, and um, and MMA is just a growing huge, um, success story coming out of Brazil. They've
Hmm.
produced so many champions in the
Yeah.
MMA world. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, do you see a lot of that down there? I mean, I imagine there's probably a soccer game going on every block and um, in every
You, you,
park.
you know what's weird with soccer? Well, first I'll tell you about MMA. MMA everywhere. Okay, there's gym down the street from me, MMA gym. There's one across the street from me, very, very popular. Obviously with like Anderson Silva, Cyborg, you know, I don't follow it that deeply, so I only know like the big names,
Sure.
but huge, huge in Brazil. So almost every gym's got some type of fighting sport. But you know what I thought was funny with soccer, because I grew up in the U.S. and there's a soccer field everywhere. You know, every high school's got a soccer field,
Yeah.
nice big one. And Brazil does not have this, you know. What they play a lot more here is futsal, on that smaller court with a smaller ball.
Hmm.
And I had to learn the hard way that it's way different than playing soccer, much faster. That little ball, you blink and you miss it.
What is it
And
called? What is that called?
I think it's called futsal. I think.
Futsal.
I
Okay.
think so.
Yeah, I've
I'm
never
pretty
heard
sure.
that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
We'll
It's
Google
played with
it.
yeah, Google it. It's played with a smaller ball, on a hard court. Okay. And the court's maybe the size of a basketball court. And I think I read somewhere where some analysts, they credit, the Brazilian players' ability on the pitch, on the grass, due to that, because their reflexes are so much faster because they play this game. And so it surprised me, because when I grew up, I would play soccer all the time in the US, and we'd play on a big field. And it's very rare to see that here. You know, unless there's some clubs where you can play, you can pay to play, but possibly for economic reasons, you know, the country just can't afford to build these big soccer fields everywhere. It's not that popular. It's the futsal, you know, that, yes, if you, anywhere you go on a Saturday or a Sunday, or even during the week, there's going to be little kids or even adults playing on the little futsal court. And it's a hard game. I learned the hard way. It's very,
Yeah, I'm looking at
don't play it if you've ingested anything that you shouldn't be ingesting, because that ball.
It looks like it's like a soccer ball, but just slightly smaller.
Yeah, it's slightly smaller. It's a little bit harder. And because it's a smaller court, that ball just goes from foot to foot, you know, faster than you can imagine. It would be almost maybe comparable to tennis versus squash.
Yeah.
You know?
There's like
there you go. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So it's a slightly smaller ball. Yeah. Interesting. I've never heard of that.
Yeah. No, I hadn't either until I came down here, because I came down here expecting to play a regular old game of soccer like I would in the US. And man, I can't get anybody to play that. Like they're just not into it. And I'm like, how? And because this is a cheaper game, it's a faster game, you know, easier access.
Do they still talk about Pele down there?
Of course. Yeah, Pele's the king. They had a few good documentaries came out about him, like since I've been here. Yeah. He's up there. I think he's maybe 80 something, still alive, but he's the king. Him and Ronaldinho, of course, and Ronaldo, you know, people still love those guys, definitely.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about affordability around Brazil. Now, I'm guessing because, you know, Sao Paulo is so large that the cost of living there varies depending on where you live. But I'm guessing that it's probably much more costlier than places outside of Sao Paulo. I'm just guessing, but maybe you could share a little insight into, you know, what the cost of an apartment would be, and what is the process if somebody wants to move to Brazil. I mean, do you just put a 1-month deposit down? Do you need a visa to stay for 6 months or 3 months? How does that work?
Are you ready for some red tape? You got some red tape over there? Bring out the red tape, okay? Well, first, I'm going to direct people to a really cool site. It's called Numbeo. I guess that's how you pronounce it, Numbeo. Really cool site. And it gives you cost of living around the world. You put in the city, it's going to give you more or less, you know, even like the price of restaurants. And it gives you like a comparable rate to other cities. Like, for example, it says here, Sao Paulo is 62.23% less expensive than New York City, or rent is 85% lower than New York. So it's a cool site. And it's pretty much on the money, because the numbers that I was thinking in my head during the week are the numbers that are here. It says that a family of 4, maybe 9,000 reais is going to get you going, you know, without rent. And a single person, more or less, you're going to be spending 2,700 reais without rent. So with rent, okay, you probably can find a decent enough place to live for 15,000 to 2,000 reais. I wouldn't spend more than 3,000 reais on a place, unless, I mean, if you're spending that much, unless you got it to spend, you're going to get a real nice place. But to me, it seems like you probably want to buy property if you're spending more than 3,000 reais for rent.
What is that in USD?
I think now the exchange rate, which is why a lot of folks are coming down, I think it's 5 to 1 right now. It was 6 earlier this year. The real is really weak right now. But on average, I mean, when we're not going through all these crazy fluctuations and world pandemics, it's been around 3 to 1. You know, 3 to 1's been the average price of the real. We're going by dollars, you know. So yeah, so the currency, if you're coming here with euros, dollars, good time to come. Everything's going to feel real cheap.
So Sao Paulo basically you're saying 1,500, 1,500
Reais.
reais to like 3,000.
Yeah,
So
I wouldn't.
you could find like a one bedroom, a pretty nice one bedroom in Sao Paulo for that.
Oh, you could find a nice two bedroom for 1,500, for 3,000 reais. You can find a nice two bedroom apartment,
Okay,
depending
so
on the region, and you'd be
yeah.
in a nice region, you know. Um,
So
if you're going to,
so just
uh,
to give the viewers an idea, so 1,500 reais is 276 US dollars.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that would be about $550 for
Hmm.
3,000
Hmm.
reais. So that's
Yeah.
incredibly affordable.
Oh yeah, no. We just went out with a buddy of ours this weekend who is planning on spending a year down here, and he's shocked by the prices, you know. For nice places, I actually showed him around Butantan. He really liked the neighborhood, and I was telling him the prices around here are way cheaper. We're across the river, um, from the rest of the city, from downtown, and once you cross that river, the prices go down even further. And again, nice neighborhoods, you know, you're not living next to Crackland, let's say, you know, you're living in a nice neighborhood and you're going to spend, I'd say comfortably, if you want to live comfortably down here, you want to make between eight, and I guess this is for long-term expats. Okay. You want to be making between 8 and 10,000 reais to live comfortably.
Hmm.
You know, whether you're making money in local currency or if you're a digital nomad, whatever, make that your goal between 8 and 10,000 to just survive, you know, live a decent life, but maybe you're not traveling all the time. You're just, you know, eating out, you know, with your friends, having some beers. You can do it on 5,000. It's a little tight, but you can do it on 5,000. That's including rent, you know, what you're paying for rent. Um, but you know, anything above 10,000, you're pretty good. Almost anywhere in Sao Paulo, unless you want to live in a little McMansion, you know, you'd be
Sure.
pretty good. Um,
So
although I did learn, oh, go ahead.
10,000 would you're talking about, and that would be including utilities, rent, food,
Yeah.
entertainment,
Hmm.
pretty much, and people can get around by bus and metro there, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I can get around by bus and metro.
Okay.
Yeah. Cause I'm thinking, you know, you spend 2,000 on rent, you got 8,000 to play with for a whole month. I mean, can't really, I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess you could spend 8,000 in a month, but
So yeah,
I
and 8,000 to US, that's basically a little over $1,400.
mm-hmm.
So people can live pretty well in a major city in Brazil, Sao
Yeah.
Paulo, for like $1,400 a month.
Yeah.
That's that's pretty fascinating. And I'm guessing that places outside of this city could be quite a bit less.
Yes. Depends on the place. Some places are more expensive, but um, actually, a plan of mine is to invest in a vehicle. You know, you don't need a vehicle in the city, but I want to invest in a vehicle to actually move to a little town in the interior because they're so cute. I've been here long enough. Like, I would not recommend anybody that comes here right off the bat to live anywhere outside of a major city because some Brazil is a complicated country.
Hmm.
Like, there's a famous phrase: Brazil is not for amateurs, and that doesn't mean people who aren't well traveled. It means amateurs in the country. Okay.
Yeah,
You could have been to 50 other countries. Trust me, Brazil is its own creation. It's a complicated country. So I recommend if you come down here, obviously to visit, you want to be in the center of, you know, where things are happening. But if you're thinking long term, if you want to spend a year down here, 2 years, stay somewhere central. You're going to get more infrastructure. You're going to have that expat network, which is very, very important. You're going to get some people that are going to be able to speak English every once in a while if you're completely lost, although learn Portuguese.
yeah,
And then when you move out, man, it's a different world. It's like it's just there aren't going to be that many safety nets for you. It's
sure.
nice, it's beautiful, but you really got to know how the country operates if you want to venture a little bit further out. But once you do, you fall in love. Like the interior of Sao Paulo is gorgeous. There's
Yeah.
so many beautiful cities, so many
Hey,
beautiful
hey,
cities.
Phil, when you say complicated, what does that mean? When people are traveling down there and Brazil is complicated, what are some of the things that they'll experience that
Well,
they need to?
first, let's go back to that red tape. Did you pull it out? Let me see. Okay, so that's the first thing, guys. A lot of bureaucracy down here. To get something very simple done, you got to go to one agency that's going to tell you to go to another agency that's going to send you back, just to get like a
Gotcha.
simple
Yeah.
ID card, Um, I mean,
Okay.
horror stories for going to the federal police, people that are trying to get their residency or get a passport or whatever. It's just, that's one part that's very complicated. Um, and I guess I'll say it's a Latin American country because I had a lady who interviewed me. She's an expat in Mexico. And when I told her this, she said it seems a lot like Mexico and Latin America, which is what? Time is like relative, very relative. A lot of little Einsteins down here in Brazil. Things don't always happen when you think they're going to happen. Yes may mean no, no means maybe. So you think you're going to do something next week, but maybe at the last minute it's going to be 3 weeks later. So there's a lot of that, and it's just part of the culture.
Hmm.
Um, Making friends here, you like you said, folks are extremely friendly down here. They're
Hmm.
very warm, and you think you just made a friend for life, just going out, having a couple drinks at a nice barbecue. But then you try to see that person again and they disappear, or, oh, yeah, let's set a date sometime. So you're like,
Why do you
is it
think that
me?
is? Why do you think they kind of disappears?
That's a great question. It's part of,
You,
it's
you,
very much part. We were discussing a little bit of this. Somebody posted an interesting article in an expat page about, you know, wh- who's more willing to take extra candy or some um, test, some psychology test, and they asked, how do you think Brazilians would fare? My theory, it's just a theory. Don't have a degree on any of that stuff. Brazil is a roller coaster of a country. It's never had a period of great stability, uh, government, society, economically, everything. So with that, I don't know if Brazilians think that far ahead. They don't think, like we would in the US, oh, what I'm gonna do in 10 years. I mean, you grew up in the US, like
yeah,
first grade, our teachers are already asking us, here, you got to prepare for high school,
yeah,
and in fifth grade, they're already saying prepare for college.
right.
So uh, I think that might be it. It's just so it's frustrating, but I don't blame them. Like I imagine if I had grown up in Brazil, I would probably be the same because I don't know what 5 years is going to look like. And it's like drastically different. It's not little change. It's not going from Trump to Biden different.
Sure.
It's going from maybe a dictatorship to maybe democracy to maybe, country and economic ruins different,
Yeah, yeah.
or economic boom different. It's very mercurial. So I think that affects the people in general. They're just like, we're just gonna live for today. And um
Yeah, I
it's very
agree.
surface.
I
Yeah, it's
agree.
very surface type of relationships. Like I
Yeah.
always say, in the US, I would never, and I don't think I could ever just go out by myself on, and just be like, yeah, I'm just gonna go out by myself, go to a bar and see what happens. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I do that all the time here. And I have the best time of my life. You start drinking with some folks, you're laughing, you're having a good time, you exchange numbers, but then it's like, okay, that was it. That was the moment. It's like living for that moment,
Yeah.
but it's not going to carry over to next week and the week after. It's very curious, but you just have to get used to it when you're
Yeah,
down here.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, I find, and I wonder, I think that growing up in the States, in certain places in the West, I mean, it's also Yeah, I mean, if you generalize, you could say it's a bit easier, but there's much more of a struggle in
Mhm.
South America and parts of South America, Central America, Mexico.
Mhm.
And I almost feel sometimes like people are that they're constantly caught up in that struggle to survive,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things that I think, when we generalize here in America, we don't have to worry as much about that
Yeah.
of survival, right? That's a
Mhm.
different thing. So I could see why, people could show up and maybe you don't see them for a long periods of time because they're in the midst of probably, I don't know, whatever, trying to stay afloat, survive, figure out that next thing that's going to put a meal on the table.
Yeah,
Um,
I think there is that, but I think it's just the personality of the country is enjoy this moment. It's
yeah.
not enjoy 5 years from now. That's not the personality of the country. So, you end up like I have friends of mine that and there's a term in Portuguese, amigo de rolê. Rolê is when you just go out on a night. And it's these people that you always see when you're out at the clubs, but you've never once invited them to your house or, just had lunch with them. And that's cool. Like you just realize that's just the way they are, the way the country is. It's just you have people for certain types of things that you want to do. You got the folks that like to go down to the beach. You like the folks that are always going to be out in the mountains, and you have like that nice hike with them, and then you won't see them for a year.
Hmm.
They're not going to invite you to their house. You're not inviting them to yours. It's a weird kind of thing. It took me a while to get used to it. I didn't like it at first. I get really frustrated with Brazilians because of that.
Yeah, yeah.
But then I just said, go with the flow. It's a very much go with the flow country, very emotional. Brazilians wear their emotions on their sleeve, and that comes from the Latin culture too.
Sure.
So you got to get used to that. So these are things that are complicated. I don't mind it too much socially. I got used to it. Where it can get frustrating is if you want to get stuff done.
Hmm.
If you need somebody to go fix that sink, if you need to close a deal, if you need to you want to open like Gandalf, the guy that I was telling you was on my podcast last week, he's opening a skate shop. He ordered furniture which they said they were going to have in 1 week. They didn't do anything because it was a holiday. He had to
Hmm.
get his lawyer to call these people, and they were like, "Yeah, but it was the holiday. We
Mm.
weren't gonna." Man, I needed this for Friday. I don't care. You should have said this before. So, yeah,
Right.
it's not a small thing. It's like a
Yeah.
real physical skate shop that
Sure.
now he can't open. Because they didn't deliver what they said they were going to deliver. So that's where it gets frustrating. That's where, if you're in our group, you see a lot of people venting for stuff like that
Sure.
that can
Yeah.
just make your hair fall out.
Yeah.
Um,
But that has a
so
lot to do with not being accustomed to the culture too. I think people
mhm,
move there and they expect things to be similar to where they come from.
yeah,
And they just aren't. And
yeah,
there needs to be an adjustment, an understanding of the culture and how they operate and how they do things. That's also
yeah.
like a respectful thing, in my opinion. But I
No, it
know
is.
there's a lot of expats that move all over the place, and then they have a rough go of it because they haven't let go of where they come from. And I go, what did you leave? Why did you leave in the first place? If you really liked where you were, go back, because
Exactly.
it's different in every place that you go to. And I think if you're going to go there, live there, then you need to become accustomed to the culture
You need, and
and
kind of accept some things.
yeah,
And what's cool about Brazil, though, is that, like we said at the beginning, it's so big that you have more choices as far as being in a place where you're going to feel you can adapt. Like Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo is a business place. It's the place you go to make money. So people here are a bit more serious about keeping commitments, keeping appointments. I mean, it's not, New York perfect, or Philadelphia perfect, but it's perfect enough where you can deal with it. Now, Rio, I couldn't live in Rio. It's just too much. It's too loose.
yeah,
Salvador, forget about it. If you want to start a business in Salvador as an expat, you're insane. Good
yeah,
luck. It's just a total, but there's expats that live there and love it. Why? Because it's exactly what you said. They accept the place for what it is, and they get into the Bahia vibe, which
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
beautiful vibe,
Sure.
but it's
Yeah.
not the Sao Paulo vibe,
Yeah.
So that's the good thing about Brazil, is that it's so big that you can kind of find a place where you adjust enough because you're in a different country, but you don't have to completely let go of who you are and some expectations that you have for business or social life and things like that.
Yeah. Where are the expats moving to? Where are the communities in Brazil? Like there's always hot spots in certain countries. There's a couple in, Ecuador and that I was talking with a guy. There's some places in Mexico, but where are they in Brazil? Where do people kind of hone in on as far as like, where are the expat? Typically, I know that they
Yeah,
like to be close to a beach, right?
yeah.
People like to be in that beach range. But are there cities that are on the map of on the
Yeah,
radar for expats that they're like and they're flocking to these areas in Brazil?
no, for sure.
And if
Well,
so,
Rio's
where are
probably,
they? Rio?
yeah, Rio's probably the top one, because that's the
Okay.
most famous city. We've seen it in movies and music and everything. So there's a lot of expats in Rio. So much so that I got a buddy of mine that he found this island in Rio, gorgeous little island, because he's like, I just got to get away from the expats, because they're all in that south zone. That's
Oh
the
wow.
famous, Ipanema, Copacabana, that from
Sure.
Bossa Nova. That's the South Zone area. And there's a lot of expats in Rio. That's probably the number one spot. Sao Paulo, I mean, maybe it's even, there's a whole lot here. There's months that I don't hang out with anybody but expats sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have a whole lot of expat friends. Salvador's big, especially for Black expats, because that's the Afro Central in Brazil. That's where you have the biggest uh, population of Afro descendants in Brazil. So for Afro tourism, Black folks, they feel at home when they go to
Mm-hmm.
Salvador. So there's a lot
I hear
there.
the carnival is amazing there.
It's different. I don't think I could handle it.
Yeah, I
It's on
heard
the
that like
street.
all my
Yeah.
Brazilian friends was saying if you want to go experience the real authentic carnival, you
Yes.
got to go to Bahia.
Oh yeah.
They've
No,
always
it's
said
it's
that.
it's a big
They
street
said don't,
party.
Rio's like Disneyland now. Go to Bahia and you'll experience
Mhm.
the real carnival.
Yeah. No, that's more, their carnival is more street party. It's like thousands and thousands of people just on the street following like a truck that has the singers on top. And yeah, it's much more with the people. Rio, Sao Paulo is actually huge with carnival now. The carnival down here, it does have the bloquinhos, which are the street parties, but the main event are the parades. It's more like Macy's, parade, but Macy's with a lot of naked women. And so we got Rio, Sao Paulo, Salvador, and Curitiba. Curitiba is very popular. That's a city south of Sao Paulo that I'm really curious to visit. It looks like a gorgeous city, a little bit colder, a little bit more European. The south of Brazil is a lot more European, a lot more influence from there, from Dutch, the Swedes, not the Swedes, Switzerland, Swiss, I guess. Um, there's some towns that look like it's straight out of Haiti, like, with the little cottages and everything. So the
Yeah.
south of Brazil is very different. German. There's some towns that even still speak German. They speak like a German dialect in the south.
Hmm.
But Curitiba is a big one. Sao Paulo is right above it. Maybe 2 hours, maybe 400 kilometers from Curitiba. And then you got Rio right above, and then
Hmm.
Salvador with Belo Horizonte. I've met more than a few expats that love Belo Horizonte. Then the Northeast, that's where you don't have as many. I mean, there's a very famous city up there called Natal. Okay. There are expats that love going there. It's a bit expensive, beautiful beach city, and nice prime real estate by the beach. But the Northeast, I mean, the problem there are mainly it's lack of infrastructure, not too many jobs. So even if you come down and you want to teach English or something, it's tough to get good work up there. So folks that go up there are usually the ones that are living off some pension. They got, digital nomad, folks that can make that dollar, really, work for them because of the exchange rate.
Sure.
But it's not a place that I would recommend if you're just coming down here and say, oh, I want to get into teaching or find, something to do down here
Hmm.
to make money. I wouldn't recommend going to the Northeast. Looks gorgeous though. I mean, people that travel there, they fall in love. They're like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the most beautiful part of Brazil. But
Hmm.
mostly down here. This is like the breadbasket. São Paulo, Rio, Curitiba, those three, and
Curitiba
Salvador.
and
Yeah.
Salvador. Yeah. Yeah. Are any of those more affordable than others?
Salvador's probably the cheapest out of all of them. Salvador's probably the cheapest. Rio, it's about the same, if not more expensive than São Paulo.
Yeah.
Actually, I can even go here on the site and see what they're giving me. They're saying 9,700 for a family of 4 in Sao Paulo. Let me see what they say for Rio. Yeah, it's about the same, 9,400.
Okay.
Yeah, they say it's 2% less expensive than Sao Paulo. So, but it's about the same. Yeah,
Hmm.
but it's expensive city. And that's something important, guys, is that, you got to think of Brazil in 2 ways. If you're coming down here, if you're a digital nomad, so you're making that money. Oh, did I just turn off my computer?
No, I
Oh,
got you.
oh, no, I didn't. Okay, am I here?
Yeah, you're still
Sorry.
here. Yep. Yep.
Okay, so if you're making that, foreign currency, Brazil is a cheap country right now.
Mhm.
It's not an expensive country. It's different if you are here and you're earning reais, then all of a sudden Brazil becomes a very expensive country. It's
Sure.
extremely expensive. So just be aware of that. Because there are, folks that are in the expat community that say, oh, come to Brazil, it's cheap, it's cheap, it's cheap. But you don't get the full story. It's cheap if you're earning dollars. It's cheap if you're earning euros. And then you come
Yes.
down here and you get into teaching English, or that's what most people do to make money down here. I do that, or I started with that. And then you realize, oh, cheap, and on what planet? I mean, this is double, triple the price of, anywhere that I've lived before. So you got to keep that in mind. The
Hmm.
real does not go far. Okay.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
always like to think of it, like a McDonald's down here. It's gonna be what, maybe 30 reais to get the full, like a McMeal, whatever they call it. So you do the conversion rate. What is that? What, $5, I guess? 5 times 6. My
Hmm.
math is terrible. So you think, oh, it's cheap to get a McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
But I always like to think of it like this. Imagine you're going to McDonald's and you're spending $30
Yeah.
on a McMeal. Okay, that's like kind of comparable to like what the prices are. So when I'm thinking, oh, a place costs 2,000 reais, I'm not thinking, oh, that's going to only cost me $100. I'm thinking, no, that would be
Right.
as if I'm paying
Yeah.
$2,000 for something.
Sure.
And then you start to see that, yes, stuff here is expensive. Bring electronics. Do not buy electronics down here. There's a lot of heavy tariffs on everything. It's a very protectionist economy. So an iPad or an iPhone or something, it's going to cost the exchange rate plus half.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be very expensive. So you got to
What do
watch out for that.
what do flats or condos go for if you wanted to purchase something? And is it easy to purchase down there?
Not very easy. Actually, you had asked about that, the rental, but let me just, I'm going to check out some prices of some condos here while we're talking. But Venda, okay, to sell. But guys, very important. Brazilian renting, okay? Actually, there was a girl who she's going through a whole bunch of issues because she came down here to Sao Paulo to go to a beach city. She was looking for a 3-month rent, and everybody's telling her, you're not going to find it. You're not going to find it. She didn't believe us. She arrived in the city, and guess what? She can't find it. So usually here, rents, the shortest contract is going to be a year. But usually it's a year, like 18 months is the average contract. How do you rent a place? Woo, okay. There's 2 main things you can do. You can go direct with the owner, but then it's like buyer beware. You know, you can have some really crappy landlords, I should say. And I'm saying, you know, what you would think a slumlord would be, but you're not paying slumlord prices. You know, it's just folks that they're not following the contracts. They're every year they're just arbitrarily raising the price of the rent just because, oh, 100 is a nice round number, so let's do it. So you can have a lot of that. You know, they don't fix anything in your house. I've had good and bad experiences doing that, but enough bad that eventually I went through a real estate agency to rent the place where I live in now. Problem with that, in Brazil, they ask either for a co-signer, which they call a fiador. So if you're an expat, good luck finding somebody that's going to sign their name and kind of guarantee that you're going to pay that, because it's their ass on the line if you don't. And two, there's a program called Porto Seguro, which is like a company that acts as an insurer, and you pay them like 2-3 months rent, but you never get that money back at the end. And again, remember we were talking about instability in the country. So there's all these guarantees that the person renting to you is not going to lose their money. So it's not easy to rent. I managed to go through the rental agency because, as you may have noticed, I got a gift for gab. So I just talked and talked and talked. And you got to learn how to cry a little bit in Brazil too. Okay. Very important. Haggling is an art down here. So you got to cry a little bit. You got to also do a little Jerry Maguire, show me the money. So I went in with my pay stubs saying, look, this is how much I make, please. And they're like, okay, you pay 3 months, okay, or no, 2 months, okay, and deposit, and boom, you're in, and you get that money back at the end. Sometimes they'll ask for 3, some places will ask for 2, but I did that through the rental agency. Usually you'll go through that process if you're renting through direct with the property owner. But like I said, buyer beware when you're going with the property owner. Much safer to go through a rental agency, a real estate agency. They follow like the guidelines as far as adjustment of rent and everything. So that's that. Now to buy, it's expensive, guys. I'm looking at some prices here. Bela Vista, which is near that Paulista area, 1,900,000 reais. Let me see. We got a few places for 350,000, which is more or less, you know, that's in Rio de Janeiro. Let me put a nice region here, which is Pinheiros. But on average, houses are going for 300 to 500,000, like a nice place, nice apartment.
Is that USD?
No, reais.
Reais. Okay.
Yeah, I'm always thinking reais here, guys, because I'm working with the.
So if we do, 350,000 is 64,000 USD. So that's really super affordable.
Yeah, I mean.
And then a $500,000 home in Brazil would be 92,000 USD.
Yeah, I'm looking at some prices here in kind of, you know, good locations. Bela Vista, 545,000, 70 square meters, 2 bedrooms, 469,000. Again, same place, Bela Vista. Vila Mariana, nice area for R1,000,000, 500. So it's all, you know,
all over
in that
the
range.
place.
These are for like some nice neighborhoods, though. They're very nice neighborhoods.
Yeah.
In all like 2 bedroom, 70 square meters.
So Phil, how's the food down there and the cost of food, like going out and, you know, eating, you know, Brazilian cuisine, and what's the cost for like a drink, a caipirinha, or a beer?
The famous caipirinha.
Oh yeah.
Again, if you're doing in conversion, it's cheap. Okay, you can get a nice meal for like $5 or less. Okay, in a really nice good meal, you know, because a kind of mid-range upscale, like, oh, not super upscale, but you know, not in a nice area, it's gonna be around 50 to 60 reais, you know, for a nice lunch. and drinks and whatever. If you're just going to a regular, regular everyday type of restaurant, you're gonna pay about 25 to 30. That's usually what I spend for lunch.
Hmm.
I eat a nice, cute little restaurant down the street, and I spend about that 25 to 30. That's with, just a little Coca-Cola, nice buffet type meal.
Hmm.
So it's about that. Okay. If you're eating out, you're probably going to spend 30 to 50 reais at a meal for a nice, decent meal. Um, to go out, just to have drinks and stuff, you're probably going to spend about 100, 200 reais to have a nice time. Again, just nice time, just
Sure.
sitting at a table,
Yeah.
having drinks, which, I mean, for me, I remember when I could do that when I first got to Brazil for like 40 reais, sometimes
Hmm.
20, so
Yeah.
the prices have gone up
Mhm.
since I've been here.
What's a
But
typical dish down there? Like a typical Brazilian dish?
everybody's favorite, rice and beans. uh, it's so funny because at the end of my podcast, I always do this little questionnaire, and we say, what's the best thing about Brazil, the worst thing, and least favorite food? Beans. And people say beans not because they don't like the beans, it's just that I don't want to see the beans every freaking day. And that,
Gotcha.
so yes, guys, Latin America, you're gonna get rice and beans every day and some meat. Okay, that's the typical Brazilian dish, either chicken or beef or something. But explore, because Brazil's got amazing cuisine. If you go outside of that, like the food from Salvador, that's where all the spices, the seafoods. Minas Gerais, I have not been to Minas yet. I hope to go there next year, but I'm in love with Minas and I haven't even been there. One, because of the people,
Hmm.
friendliest people. They got, like how we say in the US, they got that Southern comfort,
Yeah,
those
yeah.
people that just say, hey, honey, come here, darling, this and that. That's them, Minas Gerais. And they got the best food. So, it's like having that Southern breakfast. Like you think you're gonna eat a slice of bread. No, you got the whole table out for you. A lot of delicious food, good music, beautiful landscapes, mountains, and everything. So that's you got to explore Minas food. You got the churrasco from the south, the barbecue, um, a lot of fruits and oh, there's so much good food down here. I got fat
Mm.
down here.
Mm.
I gained like
You
30
don't look fat,
pounds.
man.
Uh,
You
I
look like you're in
I'm
good
not
shape.
anymore. I'm not anymore because I worked out. I had to join a gym. But I came down here. I was 118 pounds. I was a little toothpick.
Uh-huh.
And in 2, 3 years, however long, I went up to I was like 140, 150. That's a lot for,
Mhm.
I'm only 5'6".
Yeah, yeah.
So imagine, I was already starting to get a little pot belly. And
Yeah.
I was like, the food is just incredible. So I had to start running again and working out. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of
Uh,
carbs, man. That's what carbs do to you.
yes.
They
Yeah.
pack it on. We haven't
Yeah.
covered healthcare. What do the expats do? What do you do for healthcare down there? And how is the
Ooh.
healthcare?
Well, how's the healthcare? Um, well, right now I have a healthcare plan through the school where I work because, one of my many jobs is I'm a high school teacher. So part of that, the package, it's a contract work, is I get healthcare through a company called Amil. And the prices, I was actually looking at the prices because before that, I'll be honest with you, I used the public healthcare system. I didn't even, I was never really um, in a plan. But from what I see here, most of the plans are between, you know, some plans are as low as 60 to 80. Oh, there's a Fácil. That's the company that I use. 87 reais per month. Some are a little bit more expensive, 123 reais per month.
Wow. So it's
It
really
goes as,
affordable.
yeah,
Really
it goes
affordable
as,
compared to the United States.
oh no, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You can't compare it. And it's great service. I
Yeah.
mean, a meal, the one that I use, which is kind of just like a mid-range, nothing, uh fancy. Man, they have like all these little what do you call it? They have these little places that they attend you. You go there, really nice doctors. They'll send you, get your lab work done. You can get excuse me, you get pretty much every type of lab work done you can imagine. You know, go back there, it's quick. They do stuff online if you can't get to a place. I remember actually, I said I run a lot. I was running down the avenue and a truck passed and the dust, something got in my eye. And it was so bad I had to, you know, call off work and get this taken care of. I was looking like Jack Sparrow. I had something over my eye. Man, I went on the app, you know, there's a little Amul app, looked for eye doctor. There was a place in the next city over, got there, all free. Lady took care of me. I was ready to go. So I've been really happy with them. So I suggest if you got enough money to pay for private healthcare down here in Brazil, do it. If not, I mean, I lived a long time. I lived a long time down here on the public healthcare system. It's not, how do I say this? It's great and it's horrible at the same time. Okay.
Yeah.
Great in the sense of if you got shot or you're in a major accident, there's something visibly wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
You go to one of the public hospitals, they're going to take care of you and with top doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Really top doctors. Actually, one of the top hospitals in Brazil and in Sao Paulo, Hospital das Clínicas, is a public hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to get the kind of, you know, the guys who failed the medical exam doctors. No, you're going to get some top doctors. Problem is, you know, like with my eye thing, or one time I had a problem with the ear, another time, you know, sometimes they get a little stomach bug. Man, you don't want to go to the public health. You know, you're going to be stuck there in line. I mean, you can get there at 1 p.m. and you'll see a doctor at 7 p.m. It's not a cool experience.
Yeah.
But they're really great for chronic stuff. You know, they can set you up with a doctor if you have any type of chronic issues. I'm talking about, you know, in the public health system. And it varies a lot depending on where you live. That is super important. And one thing we didn't touch on about Brazil is the gap between the haves and have-nots. It's huge, huge. So you got to choose wisely where you live. You know, if you want to be a man of the people, I mean, it's a nice, you know, sentiment, but realize that you're going to be living like the people, which is with very little infrastructure, bad health, you know, healthcare facilities, bad educational facilities. So that gap is huge. That gap is really huge. You know, if you're looking at long-term expatting, you want to live in a neighborhood that maybe doesn't have to be like, you know, what Upper East Side is the rich area in New York, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to live on 6th Avenue, but you want to be somewhere where you can maybe walk to 6th Avenue, you know, where you can get to where rich folk are going to be treated and take care of stuff like that, guys. It sucks to say, but it's the reality. You know, you want to be, Brazil's very much a developing country. Some places are very first world, but a whole lot of it is still very much in the third world. So, you know, you just got to be aware of that.
Yeah, sure. So you're teaching down there.
Yes.
Are you teaching at a high school?
Yeah.
Wow. So you went through school in Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the difference? I gotta ask, what is the difference? Is there a big difference in the school that you teach in there compared to what you went through?
Huge difference. And it's kind of weird sometimes when I'm in there. It's like it's completely different. One thing you gotta know, like we were just talking about, you know, the gap, haves, have-nots. Public education here is really bad. Public schools are really, really, really bad. So almost every school is private, okay? And then that's when you start to get to, you know, mid-range kind of schools. So maybe you're paying 2,000 reais a month to put your kid in a kind of a decent, what we would just call like a regular American public school, you know, in a nice suburban neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then you get the good schools, which are going to be paying, you know, between 3, 4, 5,000 a month. And then you get the elite schools, which are 10,000 a month. But so I work at one of these private schools. So, you know, all the kids come in uniform. They work like little like all day. It's just like work like dogs, these kids. I feel bad for them. It's a different type of teaching method. I don't teach the Brazilian curriculum. I teach an American curriculum through an American university. It's almost like an after school type program that, the kids are in. So the kids are a little shocked because, in the US teaching style, it's a lot more interactive. Like, we want to ask you questions and we want to hear your answers. Whereas the Brazilian system is very much memorize A, B, C, D, etc. So the kids are used to being talked to all day. So they get a little shocked when we ask them questions, what do you think about this and that? There aren't that many extracurricular activities, or like none actually. So the schools don't have, a theater, there's very little focus on volunteer work. It's basically study, become a doctor like your dad, so it's sad, man. I love my kids.
Wow.
But I would be depressed if I had
There's
to
no
go
like
on
creative outlets in these schools?
a couple years ago, I would see kids come to my class with like painting. So I guess they have an art class, but that's about it. No music class. Oh my God. I'm their music class because I'm singing all the time in class. No theater. There's not that many sports facilities. I mean, soccer, obviously, volleyball is kind of big here. So they do have a gym. So the kids play a little bit of that, basketball. But it seems like the focus is very much on just work, study, and then get into a decent university to become, a lawyer or a doctor. And because you're part of the elite class and that's all you can do. Yeah. So it's sad. Like,
have you been in any public schools at all?
Yes. Because part of the story that I didn't get to is that when I came back to Brazil, I reconnected with my biological family, and they're not, they're middle to lower middle class folks. So that's that world. And the public schools are just, I mean, there's some that are okay, especially the state schools. The state schools tend to be a little bit better, the estaduais. The city schools are really bad. And it's what you would imagine. You go to an inner city school, there's some that are decent, if you go and you pay attention in class, you'll get out of there with the possibility of doing something with your life. Yeah. But there's a whole lot more that don't have books, that don't have teachers coming in. I mean, how many times my little cousin would send me a message and say, "Oh, the teacher's not here. We're playing soccer all day." And I'm like, good Lord, it's that, that's just a reality for a lot of the schools down here. And it's so sad because Brazil does not invest in its elementary schools. Like you come down here and you think, oh my God, free university. All the universities, the big popular ones, like the top schools are free. Like, oh, wow, that's so cool. Wrong answer, guys. It's not cool, because you can only get to those free universities if you've got rich parents that paid for really good schools for you. Yeah. So who's at the free public schools? It's not, middle class, poor people. It's all the rich folks that were able to afford good schools, and then they could take even classes to pass the entrance exam to these schools. Mm-hmm. So it's reversed, instead of investing in education on the, K through 12, especially for the public schools, they invest in these universities, but they're just for the elite folks. So it's very frustrating, the educational system here. But I love my job. If my boss is watching, I love my kids. They're so cute.
Yeah. What age are you teaching?
I guess it would be, let me see, 9th, 10th, 11th grade. Okay. So between that age, but then I'm like slowly going younger. I'm going to start with, because a teacher just had to leave. And so next week I'm getting, I guess they're like 10, 11-year-olds, Okay. So, it's gonna be an intense experience.
Good luck with that. I have an 11-year-old.
Yeah, well,
no, he's a great kid. He's a great kid.
I'm sure he is. I don't mind them because I get to send them home afterwards. You deal with them the rest of the time.
It's
I don't mind them. They're adorable.
Well, hey,
But
man.
for an hour and a half, I'll love them to death.
Yeah. Well, I got to ask you because you live in Brazil. So Brazil's known for the Amazon. That's the
Uh-huh.
big thing. Brazil is
Yes.
known for the Amazon, but that's a whole different world from Sao
Mhm.
Paulo. I mean, you go to Sao Paulo, most probably people that live there have never been to the Amazon,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
so, and they've
yeah.
never experienced it, and it's a whole different world. So, I mean, what do you know about the Amazon? Have you had an opportunity to go check it out? And, now there's such a movement for, these groups of people that go to various places in South America to do the ayahuasca ceremony, which is, and are they doing that throughout Brazil? I mean, can you do an
Yeah,
ayahuasca ceremony in Sao Paulo and
you
Rio and
can.
Bahia, or do you really have to go to the Amazon to do it? What's your experience with the Amazon?
Well, my experience with the Amazon is first when I came to America, kids asking me if I lived in the tree, and I wanted to smack the out of them, okay? Because that's what kids thought, that's what Brazil was. Captain Planet was popular when I was a kid. So the little kid with heart came from the Amazon with a monkey. I said, I've never seen a monkey, nor have I lived in a tree. I lived in in a skyscraper. So I was very proud of the fact that I came from a city. So I have zero experience with the Amazon. I love nature. I live in a neighborhood that's very green, so I got nothing against the Amazon. But I just never went, never had any curiosity to go. It's like somebody in New York in the Grand Canyon. That's about as far as the Amazon is from where I
Sure.
live.
Yeah.
But there are folks that live up there. There's a city called Manaus. There are some
Yes.
expats actually up there.
Yep.
Doesn't seem like the easiest living. The weather seems really bad, and I don't know. I mean, it's a place that I'm glad is there, but I have zero interest in going to the Amazon. And then, oh, you asked about ayahuasca. Yes, you can do that all over Brazil. Salvador is a great place to do it because Salvador is already connected to the whole spirituality vibe because of the African religions that are there, Candomblé, Umbanda, that already carry a lot of that mysticism. So mixing the ayahuasca with that is just, perfect match. So there's a lot of places there that you can do it. I'm sure there are in Rio. I don't know where, but in Sao Paulo, there's a lot of forest here. We call it the Atlantic forest. And that I've been through a lot. I've taken like 3-4 day hikes through the Atlantic forest. It's gorgeous. And because of that, there's a lot of little hubs, little communities where you can spend a whole weekend there and do ayahuasca. I actually have a friend who was a guide, ayahuasca guide. I've never done it. I'm kind of loopy enough without the drugs, so I'm a little scared sometimes to take stuff.
Yeah.
But it's something that does interest me because of how many friends I have who have taken it and said it really helped them a lot, and it helped give them a different perspective on a few things. But yeah, I don't know about the rest of Brazil because I'm in Sao Paulo, but I definitely know in Sao Paulo, not in the capital, but like I said, in these little satellite cities, that's going to take you 20-30 minute drive to get to. You can definitely do it. In Salvador, it's huge. I have a friend of mine that goes there actually 2 friends that go there exclusively for ayahuasca. They have folks that they really trust that do it.
Yeah. Do they, is cannabis legal in Brazil?
It's like with most things in Brazil, tricky to answer. Yeah, there's an expression in Brazil. It's called jogo de cintura, which literally means your cintura is your waist, and jogo is like some slack. You gotta have some slack in your waistline, which means you gotta, things aren't always cut and dry. Okay, so with marijuana, it's legal for you to have a marijuana cigarette, like a joint. Like it can't look like you're selling. So there's a certain amount where the police are gonna lock you up because they'll think you're selling it. But if you're just smoking, like you walk down the street, you smell marijuana, cops gonna walk by, he's not gonna do anything. So it's legal in that sense.
Hmm.
If it's for personal use, although I just saw a law passed. Yeah, I didn't get time to really go into it, but apparently now I think it's even legal for you to grow a plant in your house, as
Hmm.
long as it's that fine line between, are you dealing or are you using it for personal use? But technically it's not legal.
Yeah.
Technically it's illegal, so be careful. There's a story of an expat actually who did get locked up. Because he had a whole lot of plants in his house. And this was maybe 2, 3 years ago. So
Okay.
be careful.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, that's all I have, Phil. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we, you know, part ways?
Yeah,
Yeah, anything else you need?
Brazilian music is incredible.
It
So when you
is.
come down here, guys, enjoy the music. I think that's one of the best things about Brazil is the fact that you go out on the street and you're just surrounded by every type of sound, live music, music on the radio, good music, bad music, every type of rhythm, especially Salvador is full of all these rhythms. Um, I love music. I play music. So there are folks that actually they learn Portuguese and they come to Brazil because of the music. That's what
Yeah,
draws them down here.
yeah,
So if you come down to Brazil, if you come down to Sao Paulo, look for samba clubs, look for pagode clubs, look for forró, go and dance, go and enjoy the people. You're gonna have the best time of your life. It's incredible.
yeah,
That for me is the epitome of Brazil, going to these dance parties.
yeah. I fell in love with samba music. It's a happy but just absolutely beautiful music with amazing beats. And I
Yeah,
was fortunate enough to live in New York City at a time in a neighborhood where there were a lot of Brazilian restaurants, and there were a few clubs. And I used to go every
mhm,
weekend because I just had friends there. And I'd sip my caipirinhas, and they'd have live samba, and it was just amazing. It was such a great escape from New York City
yeah.
because I felt like I was in a completely different country every time I walked in there, and everybody was speaking Portuguese, and it's such a beautiful language. I mean, I think Portuguese
Mhm.
is probably, in my opinion, I think it's the most beautiful language. It just sounds
Oh,
so beautiful. It's just a beautiful language, the sound of it when people speak it. Um, but yeah, I really had an amazing time at those clubs and just listening to samba and learning how to dance to it and move my legs quickly, and like I'd be the gringo out on the dance floor, but I'd try. I'd do my best.
yeah, you got to. They'll
No,
love you for
you
it.
have to. Oh,
It
exactly.
helps after a couple beers, the legs loosen a little
Yeah,
bit.
a couple caipirinhas is what it
Yeah,
was.
caipirinhas will do it. Caipirinhas will do it. So that's it. That's my main thing because we didn't really touch on music, but you got to come down for the music.
Well,
And
you're in a
Sao Paulo's a big rock city, big rock and roll city. So if you like rock music, you're gonna love Sao Paulo.
well, you do some gigs, right? So you play
Yeah,
out in certain. Do you have any gigs coming up?
not at the moment. We just played a gig, maybe was it 1 or 2 weeks ago. So right now I'm just kind of taking a little break because I got
Yeah, yeah.
super busy.
Okay.
But when I can do it, I go out, man. And that's what I love about it is that São Paulo is a nice mixed crowd for music. So I can play some soul, some blues, I can play some hard rock, and they're all going to enjoy it. I can play some Brazilian music too in the middle, some jazz. And São Paulo years are very attuned to all these different sounds. And everybody enjoys it. A friend of mine, Pete, he goes to a lot of rock concerts, and we were commenting about this is that he takes these pictures and you see there's a mix of people there. There's white, black, Asian. And that's such a cool thing because in the US, well, everything in the US is separated on racial lines, including music. So as a kid, I liked everything. I liked pop and soul as much as I liked rock and metal. But because I liked rock and metal, the kids would look at me weird, like, how are you, how can you do that? So Brazil's very democratic with its music and everybody enjoys everything. So I love that, especially in Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo is a very democratic city when it comes to music. The punks are every color.
Yeah, yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So that's very cool.
Well, thanks for sharing that, man. That's a great way to end this. And Phil Ray, thank you so much. I appreciate you for being here and sharing your experience and your life in Sao Paulo. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And I've been listening to your podcast. They're really cool, man. You got a nice,
This is
got that nice NPR voice, you know,
oh,
real
that-
chill before I go to bed. It's
Might
like,
that's
I
the
can dig
it's
this guy.
probably the acting background a little bit, but no, man,
Yeah.
this has been great. Thank you so much, and yeah, I'd love to head down one day and hang out and come watch you perform, buddy.
Oh no, come if you're down in Sao Paulo, we'll have some caipirinhas, man. I'll take you to some nice places for
I'd love
sure.
I'd love that. I'd love that. All right, man. Well, take care. Thanks so
Have a
much.
good night. Have a
Yeah,
good
you
night.
too.
Thank you.